Welcome to Life Unpacked, the weekly podcast designed to help you navigate the everyday with more clarity, purpose, and intention. In each episode, we take the challenges, questions, and experiences that shape our lives and unpack them layer by layer. Through honest conversations and elevated perspectives, we explore practical insights that can help you grow, think differently, and create a better, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for direction, inspiration, or simply a moment to pause and reflect, Life Unpacked is your space to reset and rise. Together, we'll dig deep, open up new ways of seeing the world, and empower you to live each day with more confidence, balance, and meaning. Today, we're tackling the hardest command of all, loving your enemies. It's easy to be kind to the people who like us, but what happens when the world starts to squeeze? We've all been there. Someone attacks our character, rejects our help, or creates conflict. Our natural instinct is to retaliate and let the pressure change who we are. But today, we're exploring a different path. We'll be discussing how to anchor your love in your identity rather than someone else's opinion, and why choosing love isn't just a moral high ground. It's the only way to preserve your true self. Let's dive into the power of remaining constant under pressure.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. I recently sat down with another really powerful address coming out of the Life International Church in Durban, South Africa.
Oh, right.
And it was focused entirely on, the most difficult arena of human interaction.
Okay.
How we handle inconsistency, how we manage betrayal, and what we do when we're faced with just outright hate.
It's a crucial deep dive then. I mean, for anyone looking for practical, actionable spirituality.
Absolutely.
The teaching, it sounds like it jumps straight into that fundamental tension that really defines the human experience.
It does.
This concept of, constant, unyielding goodness. Often what we see as faith against people who are, let's be honest, just frustratingly inconsistent.
And deeply flawed.
Yeah.
Sometimes actively terrible.
Yes, actively terrible.
Exactly. If God is constant and people are inconsistent, how do we operate? How do we close that gap? The whole point is to uncover that specific, repeatable mechanism we're given to handle conflict, especially when it moves beyond just a simple disagreement.
So this is not just love your neighbor.
Not at all. This teaching goes straight to requiring you to love your nemesis.
Which is why this source material is so fascinating. I mean, it acknowledges that the easy part is loving people who reflect your own values back at you.
Or just return your kindness.
Of course. The true challenge, the real spiritual test, that begins when you're commanded to exercise this radical, costly goodness when it is least deserved.
Okay, let's unpack this necessary foundation then, because the teaching established right off the bat that the prerequisite for anything else is, well, it's love.
Can't do anything without it.
I was reminded of a powerful verse, Galatians 5:6, which essentially says that faith only works through love.
That's the absolute anchor point, isn't it? It completely reframes how we think about faith.
How so?
Well, if you think of faith as the energy source of your conviction, the sermon is saying that love is the specific engine that converts that energy into usable power.
I like that.
Without love, faith is just, it's latent energy, it's potential that never actually accomplishes anything.
That's a fantastic distinction, latent energy. I heard the speaker stress that you can have all the faith in the world, you could be perfect in every single spiritual ritual.
Mm-hmm.
But if love is not the absolute non-negotiable foundation, that faith is absolutely useless, a total waste of time.
It makes sense. We focus on being saved by grace through faith, but this pivots to the operation of it all.
Right. Our faith itself only functions when it's powered by love and directed toward other people.
It sets a really high behavioral bar then. It demands that faith isn't just an internal belief system.
No.
It has to be an external action, and it's only validated when it's expressed through genuine charity and a consistent concern for the well-being of others.
Even as we're about to see, when that concern is completely unwarranted by their actions. And before jumping to the impossible, the teaching grounded us in the achievable. It recapped the standard rule, referencing that famous summary in Matthew 22.
The commandment to love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly. The standard is simple and, I think, deeply relatable.
The principle is benchmarked against self-interest.
That's the key. You have a built-in meter for self-care. You won't cheat yourself. You won't rob yourself. You're not going to willingly inflict pain on yourself.
Right.
So the simple ethical application is don't do that to your neighbor. It's manageable.
And that's where the tension builds, because neighborly love is manageable because there's an expectation of reciprocity.
You expect something back.
Yeah, even if they don't return the kindness right away, they're part of your community. You share resources, you share space. There's a mutual, maybe silent contract of decency.
But then the teaching executed this magnificent pivot straight into enemy territory. And this is where the deep dive really begins, because this is where everyone struggles.
The radical command.
The radical command in Matthew 5.
This is the moment where the requirements move from, social decency to spiritual revolution. I love how the sermon laid out the old idea first.
The one that makes sense to our primitive brain.
The very one. You have heard it said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.
That is the natural human default, isn't it?
Wow.
If someone attacks your tribe or your family or your resources, the immediate protective response is to hate them.
And seek their downfall.
Of course.
And for the people hearing that command 2,000 years ago, the enemy wasn't some, philosophical concept.
It was real.
It could have been the occupying Roman soldier, a tax collector, people who were actively oppressing and persecuting them.
And yet here comes the impossible instruction. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good to those who hate you.
And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. The sermon, by emphasizing that contrast, it forced us to confront the true absurdity of it.
From a pure ego standpoint, yeah.
I mean, if someone is trying to ruin you, how can you possibly pray for their success?
That was my gut reaction. I was thinking, this demand, it requires a level of internal resource that just seems mathematically impossible. Loving your neighbor, fine.
Manageable.
But loving the person who actively wishes you harm, who seeks to persecute you, that just seems designed to leave you completely depleted emotionally and psychologically.
And that frustration is exactly what the teaching analyzes so brilliantly. Loving your enemy is impossible if you base your action on their behavior.
Right.
If you require them to deserve love, you will never love them. The system only works if you find a different mechanism.
And that leads directly to the central, most critical insight, the core mechanism I took away from the whole sermon, this revolutionary shift in focus.
Okay.
The clear command was, I want you to love your enemy based on who you are and not who they are.
This changes everything.
Yeah.
It's the spiritual equivalent of moving from Newtonian physics, where every action has an equal and opposite reaction, to something entirely self-sustaining. Your love becomes a constant, an expression of your own intrinsic nature, and it's completely decoupled from the enemy's performance or provocation.
You can love your enemy not because they've suddenly become good. They wouldn't be an enemy if they were, but because you have remained constant.
Your identity, your default output is love.
Yes. And the teaching used a very visceral analogy to show how easily we fail this test, how we let the enemy dictate our character.
The slap analogy, or what we might call the reactionary identity.
Precisely. If someone slaps you, let's use the name from the sermon, Jerome, what is the default human response?
The slap back.
Clap back. But not just equally. You slap back harder because that anger is driving the action.
Right.
The teaching's genius was pointing out the immediate problem.
Yeah.
If you slap back, you allow the enemy to fundamentally change who you are.
You allow their malice to infect your character.
Exactly. The enemy wins the moment they successfully recruit you to their level of hatred. They force you to mirror their worst qualities.
They dictate your identity, and suddenly you're hateful, you're irrational, and you're incapable of loving them because you've become identical to them in your reaction.
And the teaching made it so relatable by extending this reaction cycle into everyday life, especially in close relationships, like conflict in a marriage or with family.
We escalate. That's the human tendency.
When we're hurt by someone we love, we don't just hit back at the immediate thing. We hit where it hurts the most. We involve people who weren't even in the original dispute. You hear someone say something terrible like, well, that explains it. Your mother is exactly like this. And suddenly, innocent parties are dragged into it.
And why do we do that? The sermon addressed this head on. The desire to inflict worse hurt is driven by a primitive need for superiority in the conflict.
We feel justified and temporarily better about ourselves when we see the other person suffer more than we did.
But the divine standard the teaching emphasized is the opposite. If you remain constant, if who you are is to love, you will not react based on that external stimulus.
And God's not asking for something impossible for you to do, because you were created with the capacity to love.
So if you can't love your enemy, the problem isn't the command.
The problem is that you are failing to operate in your created design.
This moves the whole discussion beyond simple morality. It suggests that consistency or constancy is the optimal operational output of a properly functioning human being.
It's not about emotional compliance.
No, it's about structural integrity.
But it raises a tough question, one I often wrestle with. How does this radical goodness interact with the need for justice, or even just setting healthy boundaries?
A good question. Does the sermon make a distinction between loving an enemy and, well, allowing them to abuse you?
Exactly.
That's where the analysis of the biblical examples becomes so critical. The love being discussed is not passive compliance. It's an active choice of internal response.
So it doesn't mean you don't act.
Right. It means you don't allow their hatred to redefine you. But it doesn't mean you fail to use the authority or wisdom needed to ensure safety. The teaching implies that setting a boundary from a place of love is infinitely stronger than setting one from a place of anger.
And to prove this is even achievable, the sermon gave us two powerful historical examples. The first one, which really highlights the political tension, is the story of King David.
We're in 2 Samuel chapter 19, and this isn't just a squabble, this is a national crisis.
It's a civil war.
David's beloved son, Absalom, has betrayed him, stolen his counselors, formed an army, declared himself king. He's forced David to flee Jerusalem.
The betrayal is massive. The stakes are everything. And yet, before his army goes into battle, David gives this command that makes zero sense to his soldiers.
He begs his generals, please, please don't kill my son. Deal well with him for my sake.
He commands them to show kindness to the enemy who is actively seeking his death.
And the climax comes when Absalom is killed, not by David's instruction, but by Joab, David's pragmatic, ruthless general.
The aftermath is so powerful. David returns victorious, but he's mourning openly and passionately for Absalom, for the enemy.
This is where human logic breaks down, and the true meaning of the teaching on constancy comes into sharp focus through General Joab's mouth.
Right.
Joab, representing that natural, justified human mindset, the slap back harder mentality, he confronts David.
And basically says, your priorities are completely warped.
He delivers that stinging rebuke. Today you have disgraced all your servants, in that you love your enemies and hate your friends.
That quote is the perfect summary of the human objection to the command. Joab saw David valuing the traitor more than the loyal soldiers who risked their lives to save him.
But the teaching uses this as the ultimate proof. David demonstrated the ability to love even when the enemy was a legitimate, lethal, personal threat.
His internal character, his constancy, it didn't bend to the external reality of betrayal.
And that wasn't even David's first time exercising this impossible consistency. The sermon briefly mentioned David having 3 chances to kill Saul.
The king who spent years actively hunting David down to murder him.
And David chose not to, because he refused to allow Saul's hatred to corrupt his own constant identity. You're commanded to love, not defeat them or show them up.
Because remaining true to your loving self is always more important than their downfall.
Exactly.
Okay, let's turn that into practical application, because the sermon addressed the most common defense mechanism we use to avoid this. The compromise.
Ah, the great modern dodge. I love them as a person, but I don't like any of their ways.
We try to compartmentalize.
To justify our distance, our coldness, our silent resentment.
I heard a very serious warning about that subtle distinction. The choice to love remains, regardless of whether you like their specific actions.
And allowing that dislike to be an excuse for not loving means you're just engaging in self-deception.
Because that thin line between not liking their ways and not loving them altogether, it disappears immediately.
And that ties directly into the ultimate reason why this command exists, beyond just personal purity, the redemptive power of unchanging love.
Absolutely. The sermon was clear that when you hate someone back, that action is harmful only to the hater. Hate makes a person holding it irrational.
They start doing things that contradict their own values because they're emotionally driven by vengeance.
Hate can't transform a life. It only destroys the person who wields it.
It becomes a self-inflicted psychological and spiritual wound that prevents any possibility of reconciliation, not just with the enemy, but with your own ideal self.
But continuous, constant love, according to the teaching, operates like a slow, steady pressure. When you continuously choose to express love towards someone who actively hates you, they become deeply frustrated. They think, can't you see that I don't like you? Why do you keep being good? Why are you not reacting?
It creates dissonance in them. They can't reconcile your unyielding love with the terrible identity they've assigned to you.
And eventually that persistence, that constancy, which the sermon tied back to love being patient, kind, and enduring, it breaks them down.
Precisely because of its redemptive power. It forces the enemy to confront their own instability when met with something unbreakable.
The final takeaways offered some fantastic illustrations for integrating this consistency into daily life, especially when authority is involved.
Right.
The question was posed, how do you show love when you're in a position of authority, like correcting coworkers, or, most commonly, your own children?
It's a crucial operational question. Correction often feels like the direct opposite of kindness.
The answer was beautiful in its simplicity. You correct your coworkers because you love them, just as you correct your children because you love them.
The essence of your correction, the motivation, must still be love.
If you correct someone out of anger or revenge, you're just slapping back.
Yeah.
But if you correct them out of a genuine desire for their improvement, you are remaining constant in your love.
So the action changes, sometimes correction, sometimes quiet support. But the internal structure, the love, never does.
And then the critical analogy that cemented this entire teaching on constancy for me, the orange illustration.
Oh, this is a good one.
I heard the simple truth. If you squeeze an orange, no matter who does the squeezing, no matter what external pressure that orange is put through, you only get orange juice.
You can't squeeze lime juice out of an orange.
You can't. It's the perfect metaphor for character. The pressure, the squeeze, it tests your internal nature. It doesn't create your character, it reviews it.
So the application is simple but profound.
No matter who squeezes you, pressures you, or attacks you, nothing but love should come out of you, because that is your constant nature.
And if hatred, bitterness, or revenge comes out,
Yeah.
then you were never an orange to begin with.
Exactly.
Right.
And that idea of constant character was finalized by the insight the sermon presented during the communion segment.
What was that?
The teaching reflected on the scope of love.
Yeah.
If there are 100 people in a room and you love 99 of them, you might think you're doing wonderfully.
Sounds pretty good.
But the one person you hate ruins everything.
That hate acts like a poison. It invalidates all the goodness shown to the 99 because it demonstrates that your capacity for love is conditional.
Which means your character is defined by the one you hate, not the many you love.
It shifts the focus right back to self-examination, where it belongs.
So what does this all mean for us? This deep dive showed that the capacity to love our enemy isn't dependent on their miserable, inconsistent character.
No, it's dependent entirely on our unyielding, constant nature. We are commanded to be the source of our own stability.
What stands out to me is the teaching that love, in the face of hatred, even if it makes you look weak or thick to people like Joab.
It's actually the single strongest, most resilient, and only truly redemptive force capable of breaking down the wall of hate in another person.
So the question for you, the listener, as you navigate the inevitable squeezes of your week, is this. What aspect of your constant loving character are you currently allowing your enemy or your circumstance to change?
Choose constancy.
Until next time, goodbye and have a great week.
The next time you face rejection or hostility, remember that your response is a declaration of who you are, not a reflection of who they are. Don't let a reaction change your nature or break your consistency. If you want to see hostility break down and lives transform, it starts with the decision to stay resident in love, no matter the squeeze. This week, may your external outcome be one of peace, and may your internal impact be one of strength. We'll see you in the next episode of Life Unpacked, where we'll continue to unpack life by the unfolding of God's Word.